Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today's episode is with our first listener turned guest, Liz, also known as Funscuttle Cosplay, online around the internet. Over here, we are preparing for Hurricane Irma, which is due to make its presence known here in Orlando probably Sunday night or Monday. So I am getting this episode prepped and ready, so it is good for you guys to get it and make sure that we stay on schedule. I will be trying to work on the September 15th episode of our first official book trek episode of Hounded. I'm crossing my fingers that I can get that done and ready, and I will keep everyone up to date on our Facebook page. So don't forget to check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/talesfromthefandom. And of course, if you'd like to support the show, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/talesfromthefandom. And now with a new promo for Zeng This, I give much love to Ellie and Zenger over there. So take a listen to that, and then you'll be listening to me and Liz talk about a bunch of different fandoms.
Are you a fan of movies?
Or comics?
Or video games?
Or just anything else nerdy?
Well, you should check out the Zing This podcast. And that's spelled
Zeng.
This. And you can find us every Monday. And we have nerdy topics from comic book reviews to in-depth analysis of iconic nerdy movies, as well as video game discussions. Where's some of the best places to find us, Allie?
Well, Podbean, of course.
You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play.
Anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Yeah.
So check us out. Once again, that is
Zing This.
Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today we have a special guest on the podcast, and it is a first time that I've had a listener to the podcast join as a guest. So please welcome Liz to the podcast. How are you doing today, Liz?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being a listener. I mean, that was incredible to have someone comment and talk about how they found this podcast, and now you are here. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, for one, I'm very excited to be here. I have been listening to the podcast for going on a few months now, maybe like 2 or 3 months. I'm so happy. I am a cosplayer and content creator from South Carolina, USA. I'm a film student, so I'm very big into the production of anything, really, media, obviously. But I really want to make movies when I get out of school, so that's kind of where my focus is at right now, is a lot of consumption of media and movies and TV shows, especially older ones, which are great. I'm also a competitive cosplayer, which has been a wild ride, but not a very good one. I've only won 2 things, but everyone starts somewhere. Hopefully I will be getting a little better so I can make my own costumes for the movies and shorts and whatever I continue to make.
Absolutely. Now, what are some of the fandoms that you are into?
When you asked me this earlier, this is such a hard question for me to answer because I'm into almost everything because, I don't know, everything is amazing in its own way, and I kind of fall in love with almost anything I spend time on. So, I could hate a show, and if I spend a month watching it, I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, I can see, even though I hated this, and this, all this is amazing. Like me with Twin Peaks. I hate Twin Peaks, but I love Twin Peaks. The original, not the new thing.
Oh, okay.
I started watching the old show 2 months ago, I think, before they even announced that the new one was coming back. So I was like, well, this is ironic, but that show is something else. So yeah, most shows from like the 70s to the 80s if you can consider those fandom worthy, I'm in. Star Trek, obviously. Star Trek is a big one. Star Trek was my first fandom. That show is something else. Twilight Zone. Can there be a Twilight Zone fandom? There should be.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely a Twilight Zone nerd. I love that kind of stuff. Twin Peaks. I like creepy stuff. Oh, Hitchcock Presents. Hitchcock Presents is fantastic. Super creepy. Love it. I really like creepy, morbid things, as you can tell. More recently, definitely getting into like Xena in the 90s, and then the Lord of the Rings movies, of course, Lord of the Rings books, Star Wars, obviously. Star Wars is great. Harry Potter, everything. Just everything. Marvel comics, I love comics. Video games. I just love everything, which makes my life so much harder.
Yeah, it makes my job harder too when I have guests come on, and like I talk about it on some of my pre-show, or I talk about on when I have my guests on. I mention it on the podcast. I send out a pre-show like questionnaire to kind of narrow down or limit and see what people are into, and there are people that have sent like pages of fandoms that they're into. I'm like, I can cover about 3 of them.
My small paragraph that I sent you.
Your paragraph was nothing compared to what I've received.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I kind of tried to keep it to things that would actually be interesting and things that I hadn't seen you talk about too much.
Well, there you go, and I appreciate that.
Well, because you don't want to, while Star Wars is amazing, you don't want to hear Star Wars like 8 times. Everyone knows Star Wars. There's only so much you can talk about before it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Jar Jar, we got it. No one likes Jar Jar. Continue. Like you can't talk about this stuff constantly without it getting boring. So it's like, okay, let me just vaguely mention the ones that I've seen before and then talk about the weird ones. Unpopular opinion, Jar Jar wasn't horrible. See, I just lost so many people that like had respect for me, and nope, just gone now.
It's okay, guys. You could turn the podcast back on after you shockingly turned it off in disgust. No,
he's not too bad.
Exactly. Like is he the downfall of the prequel Star Wars movies? No.
He's just one of them.
Just he's a contributing factor, especially in, say, Phantom Menace. But
just a smidge.
But not so much like the second and third ones. I know that they address Jar Jar in a future a novel that just came out that Chuck Wendig published about what happened to Jar Jar post Empire and everything else, and what was going on with him, and it was exciting to hear about that.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yes, you should. I will not spoil the book for those who are looking for seeing what happens to Jar Jar Binks.
I kind of want to know now.
Dun dun dun.
What happens to Jar Jar?
Okay, let's start with one of the fandoms that you talked about, going back all the way to the 1970s. It celebrated its 40th anniversary, and we're getting ready to have yet again a new Star Trek franchise coming out on CBS, or at least CBS All Access Online. And you're an original Trekkie, or Trekker, as some people might say.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. Star Trek is probably one of the first fandoms, shows that I ever got into and watched. I watched Star Trek growing up, and I'm a young human being, so I absolutely did not watch it while it was still coming on. But
right.
Growing up, I basically was handed the DVDs. Well, I guess it wasn't even a DVD. It would have been a
videotape, probably.
Videotape, yeah. I think I probably could dig them up somewhere. But I was made to watch Star Trek, like, I think maybe starting when I was 4, 5, 6. So I grew up watching the original series, even though it hadn't been on TV in years. And there's just something about it. It's not, I don't know, because looking back on it, it is not the greatest thing ever, but when you're watching it, it kind of is the greatest thing ever. If that makes any sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. And it's hard to imagine that show when it was coming on in the 70s, how impactful it would be over the next 40 years.
Oh my gosh, yes. The Star Trek paved the way for so many things. Not only did it break barriers on television, it inspired a lot of it inspired a lot of inventions in the scientific field. The cell phones, tablets, all of those inspired by Star Trek. I'm pretty sure sliding doors were. Universal translators. The first time anyone had ever seen a universal translator was Star Trek, and now we have them. Talking, the first time anyone had ever seen someone talking to a computer and a computer talked back, Star Trek. Now we have Siri. Food replicators could be compared to 3D printers if you really wanted to. The Apple Watch in all of the original Apple Watch commercials, Star Trek. I did a project on this, so I'm like, I know all this junk. So many inventions and advances in the scientific community, if you trace them back to their original, the point of origin for these things, it would be the Star Trek series in the 70s.
Absolutely. And, I mean, you just look at everything around you, and it's all influenced. I mean, like you said, the tablets are the pads that they carried around. You're getting temperatures taken instead of having a thermometer in your mouth. It's something that just swipes across your head at this point, where you stick it in your ear for a few seconds. It's incredible.
It's really amazing. And then aside from science advances, it led to most of the actors, because of this, I don't know, almost everyone on that show is such a humanitarian. They have gone to do amazing things. All these actors have gone on to do amazing things since the show. They've worked with charities and events to help raise awareness and raise money. Everyone from that show is honestly a relatively awesome person in their own right. Absolutely.
And it's such a the fandom is so inclusive of each other, and it's hard to see any fighting or online. There's always crap being given from different fandoms and whatnot, but in Star Trek it's not as much as maybe some of those more mainstream fandoms that have been newer or that have come out recently.
I completely agree. Star Trek is one of the few fandoms that I've been in the community for that I've almost never seen anything bad. No one says anything about other people. No one's really rude or catty. Sometimes you'll see fandoms that act like a group of middle schoolers, honestly, which is really sad, because fandoms are supposed to be where you can talk about what you love and be in a community of people that love the same things that you do. And it's horrible when you see them fighting like cliques in 8th grade. And not even high school level cliques. You're the really just low level catty, just the ones that you're that's not even a good argument. That's just, what are you, 12?
Right.
But Star Trek's, everyone's so nice. I don't think I've ever met a person in the Star Trek fandom that's been judgmental. Well, I mean, they may be on the inside, but they're not openly judgmental, and they're not rude, and they don't go out of their way to be oh, well, I did, da-da-da. Everyone's so amazing, and even if you don't speak the same language, Star Trek kind of brings people together. There's a group of girls from Russia that barely speak English. I think most of our conversations take place on Google Translate. But these girls are some of the nicest people I've ever had the honor of talking to. And we met because of Star Trek, and they're so nice, and they have such a positive outlook on life and exploration and people in general, and it's really amazing.
And that is awesome about Star Trek and the fandom.
I agree.
Bringing
really
people
awesome.
together for 40 years.
Absolutely. No matter where you come from, where you're going, what you've done, or what you will do.
Now let's talk about the actual Star Trek show and or movies.
Yay. Okay.
Who's your favorite character?
Okay, well, I'm just gonna stick with original series and reboot movie, because if we get into the others, I'll talk for an hour.
Yeah, we're focused strictly on 70s Trek.
Okay, good. Then I can do that completely. In the original series, my favorite character would be McCoy, definitely. Dr. McCoy speaks to me on a personal level. There's something about just the grumpy friend that's so done with everything that he's been dragged into that just I relate to. But usually I'm the friend that's dragging everyone else into my crazy ideas. But I'm also Southern, so anytime that he's like, oh, well, I'll be a sunstroked possum on a rock, that is a quote. I am serious. I'm just like, yeah, me too, man.
That's hilarious.
And he has all these, like, Bones-isms that are just random sayings that I love, like the, damn it, Jim, I'm a blank, not a blank.
Right.
The, fill in as you will. Like, those are some of the greatest ones. Or in a pig's eye. And, like, as a Southern person, yeah, old people make up sayings constantly and pretend like they're real. And I just feel like he does that and confuses everyone. And I've done it sometimes. But I just say things and I'm like, what are you talking about? That's a real saying. I didn't totally just make that up. Yeah, he's
That's
my favorite.
awesome. Now, normally I would ask, like, what your favorite season might be, but with Star Trek, the original series, it's a little bit harder. There wasn't that much going on as far as seasons, but was there a particular storyline that you enjoyed in the original series?
There are a few, and I'm probably gonna... I don't think I can remember titles off the top of my head, so I'm not gonna try.
That's okay.
There's two in particular that are my absolute favorite. One is... Oh, no, there's three. There's one where when Kirk gets beamed up back onto the ship, he gets split into the good side of his personality and the bad side of his personality. And it's... I can't remember the episode title off the top of my head, but it's a really good one, and it's also the one with the space dog, which is the fluffy little dog with the horn tied to his head.
Okay.
That's a really good episode, but it's basically the physical manifestations of the two sides of Kirk's personality, the like people-loving, calm, nice people pleaser, and then the overly ambitious, egotistical, a little angry, he's real angry, side of Kirk. And they're like fighting, because it's two physical people, they're physically fighting over which of them is the better side of Kirk and which of them can make the better decisions for the crew. And ultimately, spoiler warning for a show that's 40 years old, I think the time for you to watch it has come up if you have not done it. But
yeah, I think we're safe.
It's like when someone's like, you spoiled The Hobbit, the book's been out for like 70 years. Don't complain. But anyway, Star Trek. Ultimately, the bad side of Kirk wants to sacrifice crew members, and the good side of Kirk is not about to let that happen. So that's a really good episode. I'm a big fan of it. It's very it's a nice step away from just the gung-ho Kirk that you always see. You kind of get to see a vulnerable Kirk, which is kind of vulnerable, and William Shatner don't go in the same sentence, but in this case they do. It's one of the better ones where you kind of see the better side of his acting. He actually does a decent job. So one of my other favorite episodes is, it's an episode where I don't remember exactly what it was. It's either like, I think it's a disease that's going across the ship and it makes everyone act like without inhibitions.
Okay.
Almost. Like Spock gets emotional, Sulu acts like a pirate. And I think the only person that's not affected is McCoy. Oh, and Kirk is acting ridiculous as always, but more ridiculous than usual. And I'm pretty sure McCoy is the only one that's not affected by it. But that's a funny one just because you get to see... I like all the ones where they kind of take a break from their normal persona to be a little bit more either exploratory or fun or whatever you want to call it. So that one's a good one. I think that might be called Naked Time, if I'm sure. Yeah, I'm going to say Naked Time. That's probably what it's called.
And if it's not, that's what it's called now.
If not, we just renamed it. You're welcome, Star Trek. And then...
And you said you had one more.
One more. The third one that I really like an episode called Mirror Mirror. It's very popular. Mm-hmm. A lot of people like that one. It is such a good episode. It's the episode where during an ion storm, Kirk, McCoy, Uhura, and Scotty get beamed over to basically a mirror universe, an alternate dimension, where everything, instead of it being the Federation, is the Empire. And basically it's evil Star Trek.
Yes, that episode has set so much goodness of great storytelling for the future series that have been out. I really like that episode, and it's not just because Spock has a goatee, but that is definitely one of the reasons why I like it. Why did they just you know what makes someone evil? Triangular facial hair. Costuming department, what you doing? I probably will do that in some whatever I make when I'm actually making movies. I'm like, triangular facial hair means evil. There you go.
But that's a good one too. And basically, even though I really like Spock in that one, because even though he's technically in the evil world, he's still not evil. And at the end, he basically decides that he doesn't want to be doing bad things, and he doesn't want to help Kirk do bad things. Mm-hmm. Which is nice, because good Kirk makes him see the logic, or the logic in not being evil, essentially. Because he's like, what's the logic in killing people and taking over the world? There's no logic in that. And then Spock's like, oh, you're right. Problem solved.
Exactly. There you go. And yeah, that mirror universe, the mirror universe that they eventually come up with and have all of the future franchises take place in, and even have some comic books out, mm-hmm. is so wonderful. It's one of those developed nuggets of, here's a great storyline and things that are going on, but then you'll jump from Next Generation to Deep Space Nine, and they've updated the universe, but they give you just a little bit of what maybe has happened, and you're left to try and get pieces put together, and what's been happening. And mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that episode certainly set the stage for the future generations of Star Trek fans and writers and everybody else.
Absolutely. And it's also basically one of the first times in pop culture that you saw an alternate universe being used, which basically set the stage for fans everywhere to create alternate universes, because before that, people weren't like, oh yeah, let me make up all this random stuff and put these already existing characters in it. And then they saw that and they were like, oh darn, that's a good idea. Which,
right, like there was no alternate universes of like Gunsmoke or anything like that.
And I love Gunsmoke. And but yeah, no, it's amazing. And more recently, speaking of things that have come off of Mirrorverse, the fan series called Star Trek Continues, which is, I think, one of the writers and directors is Chris White. He's from Greenville, South Carolina. And they film in Georgia. You can find it on YouTube, but they did a continuation of that Mirror episode, and I believe it's called The Fall of Eden or The Apple of Eden or something like that. And most of it's taken from the books that they wrote continuing, which is because there's two continuations of Mirror, one where Kirk essentially takes over the entire empire and becomes the emperor of the empire.
Okay.
Which is terrifying. Kirk does not need that much power. And no. And then the other one is where Spock kills Kirk because Kirk is getting so power hungry. And they kind of went off of that one where Spock basically is like, Kirk, I'm not about to help you do all this. I know we're bros, but this is not going to work out.
Awesome.
Which is, good writing.
I'll have to check it out.
It's very good. I recommend it if you haven't watched it, especially if you like old Trek. They have a bunch of, almost everything they did is completely screen accurate from the 70s.
Oh, that'll be sweet. And for anyone that's listening and is interested, I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes.
You're welcome, Chris.
There you go.
I met Chris a few weeks ago, so I'm like, I'm just going to constantly talk about your show because it's taken over my life. He's a cool dude.
That's awesome. It's always nice meeting people that do good stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah, and nobody decided to tell me. He was at a film festival I was working. Like, I was in the sound booth, and everyone was like, yeah, he did all these movies, and I was like, oh, I've never heard of that. And there were other people that were slightly more impressive with, like, what they had done, so I was kind of concentrating on them. I was like, I don't really need to pay attention to this guy. And then, I mean, he was super nice, but I was like, I'm going to schmooze with the people that have worked on things that I recognize because I want to get in with the people that have worked on things that I know. As you do in the film industry, you just constantly schmooze. And basically, one of the other guys was like, oh yeah, you like Star Trek? The guy who did all my effects and animation works for Chris. And I was like, oh, yeah? Well, how does that relate to Star Trek? You don't work on Star Trek? And he's like, no, Chris does. I'm like, excuse me? He's like, Star Trek Continues. And I was like, oh, it's not like I totally watch that show constantly. Don't worry about it. You fangirl. And then I talked to him for the rest of the weekend, which was great.
And there you go.
If he hears that, he's going to be like, meh. Sorry, Chris.
So, on top of the Star Trek, the TV series, are you a fan of the original Trek movie series?
I absolutely am. I think the first one... well, no, I think they're all pretty good. They're not the best things in the world. They're not bad, though.
Do you subscribe to the odd numbers are the not so good ones and the even numbers are the good ones?
Yeah, a little. I think that there's something good and something bad about all of them. I think the first one, they were trying a little too hard to push out a space movie.
Okay.
And they weren't really sure what direction they took because they knew they could not be Star Wars. Essentially.
Right.
Because the first movie came out, they started production, I think, right after Star Trek was in theaters, if I'm correct on my facts. But the first one, they were definitely trying to make a space movie, and they weren't quite sure how they were going to do that without being, oh, it's just Star Wars again. Star Wars with less fighting. And So I think the first one might have been a little rocky. Second one's fantastic.
Wrath of Khan, wonderful.
Breaks my heart constantly. Yeah, the odd numbered ones are a little not the best, but they're not bad. They're not horrible.
Right.
Yeah, everyone likes the space whales.
Of course. I was going to say Search for Spock has, there's some good moments in that one. But yeah, between Wrath of Khan, Voyage Home, and then Undiscovered Country, it's just amazing. Like, those 3 movies out of the original 6 is just like everything that you'd want in a Star Trek movie.
I completely agree. I think the even number ones are fantastic, and the odd number ones are good.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh, no. It's a tie between Wrath of Khan and Whales. I don't know why I like the whale movie so much.
Because you get the quintessential 80s going on with, like, the big giant stereo boom boxes and mohawks, and you get Scotty inventing stuff that wasn't invented yet, and then playing it off was like, well, what if I didn't tell him how to do it? Maybe it wouldn't be invented in the future.
Yeah, you're right. Because that's not a lot of people's favorite movie, but it's a funny one. I like it. It's an entertaining one to watch. And then Wrath of Khan, of course, is most people's favorite.
Yeah, I like Wrath of Khan. The first movie that I saw from the Star Trek series was Undiscovered Country in the movie theaters.
Ooh.
And that was amazing. That was almost like life-changing, because you went into that movie and I saw it, and that's almost immediately, like, I was on the Star Trek Next Generation, watching that, going back and watching the old Star Trek series, watching the old Star Trek movies, joining the Star Trek fan club. Like, it was everything downhill after that.
And this was the start of my descent into darkness.
Exactly. Are you a fan of the reboots?
Absolutely. I think the reboots have done a fantastic job. Casting, of course, it was fantastic, especially you could really see the amazing job they did casting in this last movie, which kind of sucks that it took 3 movies to see all the characters, but finally we got some spotlights on characters other than Kirk and Spock, which was great. I was so happy to have Chekhov say something was invented in Russia that wasn't invented in Russia. I was waiting 3 movies and I got it.
That's awesome. Yeah, those movies, I didn't like the second one so much, but I really liked the first one and the third one.
Yeah, from what I've noticed, the second one, you either love it or you hate it, and most fans of the original movies and the original series were not digging the second movie. It's also a little lazy. No offense to them. I mean, they don't care. They made money off it, so it's like, what does my opinion matter? But nobody from the South is like, lazy movie. They're like, nah, we made our millions, go away. But it was a little bit lazy storytelling, too. And I get that they were trying to do the whole, well, this is an alternate universe, and so everything is going to be the same but different. I get it, but they literally just rehashed Wrath of Khan slightly differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I still cried over it, but...
And they spent the year telling us, we're not doing Wrath of Khan, we're not doing Khan, this person's not Khan, it's not happening.
This is John Harrison.
Right.
Surprise, it's Khan.
Surprise. Yeah, that was...
they could have at least thrown in, like, a low V vest. Come on. You gotta... If he's gonna be Khan, he's gotta be Khan.
Exactly.
Like... And I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he's talented. And he was fantastic. But he doesn't feel like Khan to me. When I think Khan, I think, like, Khan. Like, super tan, outrageous pectoral muscles, and, like, of open vest and crazy hair.
Yes.
They totally could have made that modern. Without the, like, 80s hair. They totally could have done it.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. That's
should have. Like, it would have been way more terrifying to have a middle-aged dude like just ruin the lives of these people. It would have been so much more entertaining than like a guy who looks 26
Exactly.
with like supermodel hair. No.
Yeah. Okay, so we've spent some time on Star Trek, the original series. And my apologies for people that want to hear more about Star Trek, the original series, but we're going to go from Star Trek to something a little bit more modern. And I've talked to a few people about this topic before, but it's always fun to talk about. And that is an author by the name of Rick Riordan, and he publishes a great deal of books every year, at least 2 a year. And he got his start with a small book series that people might have heard of called Percy Jackson.
Super small. It's just obscure.
I mean, it's launched. Let's see here. There's 10 books in the Percy Jackson. He's got 2 book series, and they're total 10 books. He's got an Egyptian series that's 3 books. He's got a Norse series that's 2 books in, and he's got a spin-off from the Percy Jackson world that is 2 books in, and they all exist in the same universe.
And there's also all of the Demigod files, and then the like 3 books that are written from Percy's point of view, telling stories about the original Greek gods and then the heroes, which this dude either doesn't stop writing or he's pulled a James Patterson and just lets everyone else write his stuff and signs his name to it. And I'm not sure which it is. Probably for those little tiny books, he might let other people write them. I don't know.
I don't know. He does not do a lot of stuff as far as like interviews or book tours. And I mean, he does do the book tours when a new book launches, but he's not doing like book signings. He's more like just going to talk about the book, and that's it. And I mean, he is... I don't know how much he writes, but he must write really quickly.
Or he just never leaves his room, which is also a possibility. He just sits there,
that too.
And it's like, I will write 10 pages or I will not sleep.
Now, how did you discover or find the Percy Jackson series?
I started reading Percy Jackson, I guess, when the original series came out. I think I was in middle school, I guess. I don't remember the year, I'd tell you, but I'm assuming middle school. And the series wasn't done yet, and I picked up the first one because, as most middle school females in the 2000s, I liked fantasy and I like fiction, and unlike most middle school females in the 2000s, if it had romance, I had wanted nothing to do with it. I was a reading tomboy snob, and I did not like no Twilight, get that away from me, no like sappy fictional, ugh, not having it. I liked action, and I liked kind of snarky people, and anything that had to do with history, I was totally down. So history and fiction and fantasy and mythology, some of my favorite things in the world. And I was like, sign me up for whatever this is. So I started reading that one and very quickly finished it and read the second one. And then the third one, I think they were on the 4th one, like the 5th one hadn't come out yet. And I got put on the list to get the 5th one. And I think essentially the entire school was on the list to get this at the library at school. And I think I waited like possibly 4 months before I read the last one. And I think my mom finally caved and just bought it for me. But that's how, like, it just sounded interesting, and everyone was like, well, if you like action and sass and history, this is probably where you need to be hanging out.
Exactly.
And here we are.
Exactly. I had a friend I have a friend. She knew what I liked reading and what I was into, and she sent me the original box set, plus Lost Hero had just come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I read the first 5 books within maybe a 5-day period, a 6-day period. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, those books, they are pretty short, which is great because you can get through them pretty fast if you're trying. But they're good. They're really good for like essentially children's books. I mean, they're not. They're young adult books, but that's really great writing for young people, which you don't see a lot of fantastic writing in YA. YA is kind of the fluff of the writing universe. It's anyone can write for YA.
Right.
But his is good, and the storyline's good, and the books are actually super interesting, and you don't want to put them down because you're like, each book has a cliffhanger. It's like, oh, well, what happened to Percy with the monster? What happened to, where is everyone? What happened to Luke? What happened to da-da-da-da? Where's everyone I care about? Why have you taken the characters I have loved and put them in horrible situations, Rick Riordan?
Absolutely. And one of the great things now with the wealth of material that's out there is that you go back and reread some of the books in the first series and you're finding clues or little hints or tidbits to stuff that's in the second series or even the stuff that's going on, the new material that's being published now. Like, there's so much layers to the books.
Yeah, it's really amazing, especially with I prefer all the Greek and Roman ones. The Egyptian and the Norse weren't quite my style, but as far as the Greek ones go, I think he's basically had most of this stuff in mind for years. Especially, I think he knew probably from I'm feeling in the middle of the final book that he knew that he was going to write. I think he knew while he was writing the Greek series that he was going to eventually write the Roman series. And I think in the middle of the 5th book, I think he'd possibly solidified the idea that he was going to write it. So you can really see hints to the Roman series in the last book of the Greek series, which is fantastic when authors think that ahead.
Absolutely. And it's just so much fun. Like, you get the little snippets and tidbits and you're like, I wonder how that's going to be resolved. Like, there's still certain things from the Heroes of Olympus series, which is that Roman Greek combination, where there's things that are mentioned and they don't ever come back up. And like, there was one particular character who I love in the second series, and I'm waiting to see how they're going to resolve his storyline, because it was such a big thing throughout that series, the Heroes of Olympus series, that it's not resolved yet. And I'm really hoping that they resolve it at some point in the future.
Just let's not talk about conflict. The conflict is, but which character is it?
Frank Zhang or
I
Zhang,
love Frank.
I love Frank, and I'm excited to see what potentially happens if he shows back up, if he doesn't show back up. But he's got something, like, there's a part of his character, which, I mean, the books have been out for a while, so I guess I'll go ahead and say it. His life is tied to a piece of firewood, basically, that has been burned, and once that stick gets burned completely, like, he's dead, essentially. And there is made mention, I believe, either when his grandmother was talking to him about it, like, they warned him that he was like, basically he is too powerful because he's both Roman and Greek. He's got the Roman parentage, but he's descended from a Greek character, Greek figure, and it makes him like a cousin or a half brother to Percy or something along those lines. But it's so important that they tied his life to a piece of firewood, and I really want to know if it ever comes back into play.
I really hope he comes back. Also, I haven't read the second of the Apollo series, so if he's back, if Leo's back, do not tell me. But casually waiting for Leo to show up again. I love Leo so much. Just precious little bean. I love him. He's just sassy. I love him.
Yeah, the new characters that they introduced in the Heroes of Olympus series were incredibly wonderful. I loved Frank. I loved Hazel. Leo was good. Not so much keen on, like, say, Jason Grace, but
Aw.
you know, you get Thalia along with that at some point. So Piper was okay. I liked her storyline.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite character? Who's your favorite character? I just gotta ask, and you can give me multiple because there's so many.
Okay. I don't know why, but Jason, I love Jason.
Okay.
Because he's kind of dorky and awkward, like a Labrador Retriever, almost. But then he busts out sometimes and turns into Captain America.
Right.
Which, I mean, Captain America is also a Labrador Retriever, so it works. But he's just, there's something about him that just reminds me a lot of, like, the characters I generally gravitate towards, which are kind of like the slightly awkward, really good. I mean, they're boring characters. They're the good guys that everyone kind of just loves. And I don't know, something about that makes me happy. So just my stereotypical, yes, I love Jason. And then Nico, of course. I love Nico D'Angelo.
Yes.
He's sassy and he kicks butt. And he's a very just angry little boy. And I love him.
Yeah. I like him. I like that he was kind of that bridge between the Greeks and the Romans. And you're like, what's Nico doing in New Rome? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, he is fantastic. He just reminds me of, like, all the emo kids from high school. Just the people that listen to My Chemical Romance in the corner. Like, he just reminds me of just, like, an angry ball, just a ball of, like, angry fuzz, but then is really cute at the same time, like a Pomeranian almost.
Right.
I'm just comparing all the characters to dogs, I'm sorry. And then third and final favorite character, who is almost never in the books. He's finally in the Apollo books. Will freaking Solace. My boy.
Why do you like Will, just out of curiosity?
Growing up, I loved Greek mythology growing up. I was a super nerd as a kid. I, like, read textbooks and stuff because my mom was a teacher, so she kind of just let me at whatever I wanted. And so Apollo was always my favorite god. Like, since I could read and understand mythology, Apollo, out of every type of mythology, Apollo was my god. And in the books, the first series, they did never talk about him that much. And I was like, well, darn, you talked about essentially almost every other god except for Apollo. And I was kind of upset about that because he's my favorite. And then they finally started introducing Apollo later in the Greek series, and then, like, they vaguely mentioned him, and then in the Roman series a little bit, barely still. And I was like, well, finally. And then they introduced the character that's associated with Apollo, which would be Will, and he's just everything that I wanted him to be. Just a good person. He's a doctor, like, he works at the medical tent or whatever. And I don't know, and when I imagine him, I'm just like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted a kid of Apollo to be. Cute, kind of musical, artistically inclined, super helpful, ray of sunshine. And I got that, and I'm super happy about it. And then when he was even more important in the Apollo books, it just made my life complete, essentially. I'm so happy that he's important now.
Yes, it's nice to see some of those background characters, like, move to the forefront and be like, oh, look, I remember seeing you back in, like, book 3, and now you're, like, a camp leader or a counselor or whatever. It's just fun.
It's so fun, and it helps that you kind of, I mean, you haven't grown with the characters because you haven't known them, but it's just like, I don't know, it reminds me a lot of the way that real life works, is you kind of associate with people vaguely, and then they show up later in life, and you're like, oh yeah, you. So, that's cool.
And we talked before off the recording, and we talked about how you're behind on some of the books, like the second Apollo book and the second Magnus Chase book, which is the Norse mythology one. Do you have either like a favorite book or a series that you prefer like over the others?
I don't know. I think the original Lightning Thief.
Okay.
That's definitely, I mean, that's the book that started it all for me. It's such a good book. And it did a really good job of setting the stage for everything else that was going to come after it. I don't know why. That's just my favorite book. I guess it's because it's the first one and it just setting everything up. And that one's tied with the first of the Roman series, The Lost Hero.
Absolutely. I mean, the first book is always one of the better books as far as you get your characters and you have your and I mean every book series it seems like gets a trio. With Harry Potter it's Harry, Ron, and Hermione. With that particular book series is Grover, Annabeth, and Percy, and
and then it's Jason, Piper, and Leo.
Jason, Piper, Leo, and then Frank, Hazel, and Percy, and then they merge into the Super Force.
It's like the Justice League, but not.
That's right. The Justice League of demigods. Where Percy is Aquaman.
I just want him to talk to a blowfish. It's my random request. I just want Percy to talk to a blowfish.
Random request. Now, moving off of Percy, there's a comic book series that hasn't been around for a while. I don't know if the characters are currently around because Marvel has done like a huge shakeup of its world and its stuff, and Doctor Doom was like in control of everything, and so let's ignore that and go back to like the good times of Marvel before that. And you're into a comic series that was Young Avengers.
Yes, let's stick to the happy side of Marvel, which is Marvel Now.
Yes.
It's my favorite little era.
So Young Avengers is basically Avengers with younger people kind of filling out those main roles, but not technically.
Yeah, so Young Avengers is basically after some junk went down in the Marvel universe, as it does constantly, the Avengers aren't really around so much as the Avengers, and this guy shows up and finds some other kids essentially, and it's like, hey, let's do a thing. And they're all like, oh yeah, sure, let's do it. And they're originally called like Teen Hulk, Kid Thor, like they have, because they don't have real names yet, and
right,
but it's essentially like a Captain America type dude, an Iron Man type dude, a Hulk type dude, and a Thor type dude. And then they're like, okay, let's actually make a real team and not just have it be wannabes. I mean, the kids themselves want to be the Avengers. They kind of always have that Avengers influence with them, but eventually they gather a team together, and it's essentially a bunch of teenagers being the new and improved Avengers. I said that word wrong. Avengers. And it's Hulkling, he's an alien. Wiccan, which is one of the sons of Scarlet Witch. Speedy, the other son of Scarlet Witch. Patriot, which I'm not 100% sure. Patriot's someone's grandson. It's been a while since I've read it, because they kind of...
Patriot is the son or grandson of the original Captain America, who was black.
That is correct, yes. I think his name was like Isaiah or Isaac or something, like the original Captain America. And he has a really interesting storyline, because he doesn't actually have powers, and he like takes this mutant growth hormone essentially to give himself powers temporarily. And when people find out, they get mad at him and he leaves, because he's ashamed of what he's done, and then the team kind of is upset with him for lying. And then eventually he gets in some trouble and has to get a blood transfusion, and the only one around to give it is his grandfather, and then he gets Captain America powers.
Right. I think I remember that part of the story.
Which again, it's been a sec since I've read it, because they essentially really haven't brought it up too much in the past few years,
Right.
with the all new, all different that's going on right now, which is a shame because it was a great storyline. Let's see who else was in. Ooh, Cassie Lang, Scott Lang's daughter. She's
Yep,
Stature.
love Cassie.
I love Cassie. She's just precious. And then America Chavez. I love her. She can kick holes in time and space, essentially. She can physically kick holes in time and space.
And that is awesome.
So amazing. I wonder who thought that up. And then, and Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, little baby Hawkeye.
Yes. Yes, I think she has her own series now, if I'm not mistaken.
She does, and she also had a series. It might be the same series, but she had a thing with just Hawkeye, like Clint, and then I know she showed up in his Hawkeye series, the one that had the purple cover, that was cool and edgy looking. And then I know she has her own now, which is great. She was such a cool character. But that series itself is so good, like the Children's Crusade and all the stuff with Scarlet Witch and Vision, and what is it? It's either Doom or Taskmaster, and I'm gonna hate myself for forgetting this. It like kidnaps Scarlet Witch, and then Wiccan goes to save her, and she doesn't remember him, and it's crazy.
Right, because, the whole, I think is like No More Mutants and House of M and everything else, yeah.
All that stuff, just at the same time, making life confusing.
So how did you find or come across Young Avengers? Like, what was it that got you into it?
I'm pretty sure I saw a picture of America Chavez and was like, who's that? That's cool. I like her. And then Googled it and found Young Avengers, and I read them completely out of order. I think I started with the actual Young Avengers series instead of starting where they had shown up in other people's stuff.
Okay,
which,
gotcha.
If I had been a good little comic book nerd, I would have gone back to where they'd originally shown up, and so I actually would have gotten backstory before I jumped into the misadventures of teenagers. But I didn't do that.
Right.
And so I just hopped into them all working as a team without going back first. I eventually went back. But I think I just found a picture and was like, oh, I want to know who that is.
Yeah, I remember them coming out. I don't remember if it came out at the same time as one of the other comics I loved at that point, which was The Runaways.
Yes.
And they had some original crossovers with the Runaways and the Young Avengers at a few times they've had crossovers or little books together. But I do remember that series. I really enjoyed like that original team, and then of course they had like some shakeups of characters and whatnot. And I think Miss America was one of the later ones, right? Like she joined. She's later in the series. Yeah,
she was a more recent, not recent because the series is a few years old now, but she was one of the later ones to get introduced. And I think she was introduced like right around the time that they had, like, when they all started working together as a team. I'm pretty sure that's when they introduced America.
Yeah, but it's a good, solid comic series that sadly,
died.
Marvel's doing a lot of stuff, and some of it's really good, and some of it's not great.
We're not talking about that.
But Young Avengers is something where I wish they would incorporate them more into what's going on now.
Absolutely. I think it would be... they can't with certain things because they've already... I don't know. They actually may possibly be bringing Wiccan around because they need a way to solve what they've been recently doing with Captain America, and they've already killed off Kobik, and so I think there's only a few characters left in the Marvel universe that can do what she's been doing, And so they might have to bring Wiccan around to fix it. I don't know. Possibly. Because, like, there's only so many characters that can, like, take things from other realities. So, like, I don't know. That's just me hoping. They'll probably bring, like, Deadpool or something. Someone that doesn't make sense. Like, remember that a few times that we brought Deadpool around to grab things out of other dimensions with the Deadpool core? Yeah, let's totally make that relevant again.
Absolutely. Like, that's one of those things where it's just, when in doubt, insert, like, Wolverine or Deadpool.
When in doubt, let's just write in favorite characters and somehow it'll work out.
And then put them on the cover, even if they're not even in the issue, just to sell the comics.
Oh, absolutely. My favorite's when they put, like, Mary Jane on the front of Spider-Man issues, and she's not even in the series anymore.
Yes.
My favorite
Oh my
thing.
gosh. But yeah, Young Avengers is definitely, if you guys have not read Young Avengers and you're listening to this podcast, you need to get a trade paperback or 2 or 3 and catch up, because that is one of the great series from the beyond that is not happening anymore, and you just need to.
It's a really good one, and it's cute usually. I mean, there's some sad parts that'll make you sad and hurt, but for the most part, it's really cute, and it's just fun to see these kids these teenagers that have teenager problems that are also superheroes, and they're also dealing with, like, each other, and I don't know, it's a really good one, especially if you're a young adult, or, I mean, hell, anyone can read it, but it's a good one for, like, teenagers and college kids, I think.
Yes, definitely. Everyone go check it out.
Yes.
That's all I have to say.
Absolutely.
Now, you said at the beginning you are a cosplayer, and not only a normal cosplayer, you're a competitive cosplayer.
Unfortunately.
So how did you get into cosplay?
My aunt works on movies. She's a set director. And so from a very young age, I have been exposed to costumes and props and how things go together in movies and all that stuff. And also from a very young age, she has been dressing me up essentially as fictional characters. I think one of the oldest baby pictures I can find of myself is from Halloween one year. I'm dressed as Princess Leia, and, like, it's gotta be one of my first Halloweens. It's such an old picture. Like, I look like an alien. So I've got to be super young, because babies only look like aliens for a little while. Well, babies don't always look like aliens. Babies are weird sometimes. Like, babies look like aliens. You can't say that I'm wrong on that. But
no, I had 3 aliens, so you know.
You know them. They for a little while, they definitely don't look like they're humans. They're just like, what are you, E.T.? Like, you're just shrivelly and gross.
Exactly.
Kids are, I mean, I'm talking about myself too. Like, I was a weird looking baby, but so yeah, like, I was always dressed up as, like, fictional characters growing up, and whenever for Halloween, while everyone was like generic fairy, princess, something from the party store or whatever, my grandma or my aunt, like, helped me make costumes so I could be whatever. Like, I don't know, one year I wanted to be Guinevere, and the costume from the store wasn't accurate because I was a history snob as a 7-year-old. I'm sure to my mother's disappointment. No, I mean, she was ecstatic that I liked history so much, but it wasn't accurate because I was like, no, they don't look like this in history. And so we made a slightly more accurate version of what Guinevere's gown would have looked like from the Legends of King Arthur. And then I wanted to be, like, a knight or something, so we made armor. I mean, it was just silver fabric, but it was armor for me. Or, like, all kinds of stuff. So that was growing up, and then in middle school, my aunt was like, yeah, you know that this is a thing. And I'm like, it is? And so she showed me, like, pictures, and was like, yeah, people dress up as fictional characters and, like, actually go associate with each other. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, actually. And so in high school, I started going to conventions and making costumes myself. And then more recently, like in the past 2 years, I started competing. And that has been my journey so far.
Awesome. Now, I do like to ask all my cosplayers that when you decide on a cosplay, are you deciding based on that you like the character, or you maybe like the outfit and maybe not so much the character, or is it a mixture of both?
For me, I will not cosplay. I mean, no, I can't say that. Because I will do like really simple things for any character. Like if someone's like, "Oh, you'd look good as duh." Like last night actually, someone sent me a message on Instagram, was like, "Hey, you'd look good as Prompto from Final Fantasy 15." I was like, golly gee, I wonder. And so I found a wig in my closet, styled it like Prompto, and did a really like fast makeup test in my bathroom. And granted, I don't consider that a real cosplay, but like I will do simple stuff for just about anything, whether I like their face or I just want to see, or if I want to possibly make their costume, like if I would pull off their face kind of thing. Not like physically rip their face off the character, but like if I could, if I can replicate their face onto my face. And then, but the ones that I actually spend time, effort, money, stress, my sanity on, those are all characters that I have a strong emotional attachment to. I will not put time, effort, and most importantly, money, because I'm a student still and I am broke, into anything unless I love them. And so, like, I'm currently working on something that is absolutely gonna drive me insane before I finish it, but I'm making the wetsuit from Star Trek Into Darkness that is only in the show for maybe 7 minutes, not even 5 minutes. And I was like, I love it. I love this stupid outfit. I want to wear this stupid outfit. I am going to cry while making this stupid outfit. Let's make the stupid outfit. And same with me building armor. Like, I'll look at it and I love the character so much, and I know that it's going to cause me physical pain to make this. And I'm like, yep, let's go. Let's do it.
There.
The things we do for those characters.
What are some of your favorite characters that you've cosplayed?
Oh gosh, definitely. I mean, all of them, of course, because I love. If I take the time to make it and have done shoots for it and put out pictures, I love the characters. Definitely one of my favorites would be Winter Soldier. I do Bucky Barnes Winter Soldier, specifically the one from Civil War, because that's the jacket I was able to get my hands on, because I wasn't about to make that. Sewing leather is a pain. And it's hard. Anyone who says it's not's lying. And so that one is really fun just because I've been in love with Bucky since the first movie came out. I didn't start reading. I mean, I read comics, just not Captain America, until the Captain America movie came out. And then I fell in love with Bucky in that movie. We share a birthday. So I was like, look, it's fate. So I was like, yeah, I'm eventually going to do it. And I've wanted to be Bucky since that movie came out. And I finally was able to do it this past, I guess, January-ish, maybe. I don't know. I finally got it. And I finally have the arm, and I finally got everything together. And I was like, okay, awesome. I can do Winter Soldier now. So that's a favorite. And then definitely Anders from Dragon Age 2, which is surprisingly, people don't like that game. I didn't know that, because I was like, oh, everyone likes it because I like it. Nope, people hate that game, because everyone thinks that it's kind of bad storytelling compared to the other two in the series. But when I was playing it, I just fell in love with Anders, who's this mage, and he's a healer, and he's kind of a little bit crazy, but I love him. And his costume. The people who create these things must look at the costumes they're making and go, what will make our fans hate themselves? Because I swear to goodness, that is the most difficult thing I've ever made in my entire life, and I'm currently sewing stretch spandex, and stretch spandex is also incredibly difficult, but not as difficult as this dude's outfit. It is over 120 individually sewn squares to make this like quilted jacket. And then of course you have to line it, because you have to line it because otherwise you can see all the seams and it looks ugly. And so it's so heavy and it's just dense and it's so hard to sew all those squares together. It took me an entire summer last summer to do it. And then there's like, his shirt couldn't have just been normally stitched. You have to see every stitch, and it has to be a completely different color than the fabric, because of course it does. So, like, every seam on this shirt that goes with it, I have, like, gone over and stitched X's over the seam to make it look like it was hand-sewn, and everything, because he's a grungy little dude. Everything is, like, soaked in coffee, so it's, like, splotchy and gross looking, and it was like physically painful to do that after I'd spent months making it, to like ruin it. But it's absolutely one of my favorite things that I've ever worn, and it's so hot and uncomfortable, but I love every second of it. And the prop's super cumbersome because it's taller than I am, and there's parts of it that light up sometimes when I go through the effort of actually stringing on all the LEDs, but it's the most pain in the butt costume I've ever made in my entire life. But I absolutely, if I could be any character, just wear it constantly, it would be his. Just, I guess it's the effort that you put into it. After you spend that much time on it, you're like, yes, this is my child.
Right. Like, there's some cosplayers that I follow, and they spend hours and hours and days and getting, to do the cosplay. They wear it for like one photo shoot, maybe a day at a con, and then they're like, okay, I'm done, and I'm selling it because I'm not ever going to wear it again.
Mm-hmm. And I completely understand that for like things that you don't 100% care about. Like, well, no, because that's not true either, but like, if you make a lot of costumes in a year, which some people totally do, you need to be able to sell your costumes so you can have the funds to start a new one, which I completely understand, because it's not a cheap hobby, and there's almost no way to like get any of the money that you're putting into the stuff back unless you win awards, or you're supported by your fans, or you sell prints or props, or you do commissions. I do commissions, so like almost all of the money I get from people commissioning me props and costumes and wigs and stuff goes back into making more costumes. Like, I spend way too much money on this hobby. It's not a good thing. My life would be so much better if I didn't do this, but at the same time it wouldn't be as fun. Where's the fun in being
exactly boring? Exactly. Like, it's amazing to know like how much time and effort and money goes into it, but you get like this really cool thing at the end of it. Like, some you could say, oh, I'm just going to spend my money going out to restaurants, but what do you have to show for that?
Waistline.
You do, yes. Yes, that is. Yeah, like
one of my best friends who's recently gotten into cosplay. He is a big he collects records, and he spends a lot of money on music, and I spend almost all my money. Well, I have a separate fund that goes towards cosplay. It's not my real money. Like, I have my life still, but I spend my fun time money on costumes for the most part, costumes and traveling and camera equipment, essentially. My life is taken over by camera equipment currently, but the camera and recording equipment just eating all of the money in the world.
Absolutely.
He was trying to get into costumes because he's going to Dragon Con with me this upcoming year. And he's like, wow, this stuff's really expensive. How do you just spend money on this when you don't get anything back? And I'm just like, you do it because you love it and because you like what you can create, but you can't do a lot of things on top of cosplay if you don't have some steady income coming in. Like, it's pretty difficult if you aren't, for people that have to do the adult things, it's very difficult to like constantly be creating stuff, which then people that follow you occasionally get annoyed of when you post the same stuff. But it's like, I have bills to pay. I can't make more things right now. So you just have to deal with the same things that I love. And if you don't love them, that sucks because I love them. So meh.
Yeah, they're exactly. Now, what is it about competitive cosplay?
I got into that about a year ago, I think. Well, no, I got into it essentially as soon as I finished making Anders. I put so much work and effort into this that I was like, you know what? I can enter this in something. And so I did. And I lost. And then I was like, well, I'm going to do it again. And I remade it and made it better. And I entered again. And in this one, I won. And I was like, oh, this is actually kind of amazing. I enjoy winning things, but I also enjoy being able to show off and meet people that have also put a lot of time and effort into things that they're really proud of. Probably one of the most fun things about competing is meeting other people. Like, the one that I lost horribly, I lost spectacularly at the first one I ever entered. Like, real bad. I didn't stand a chance. Granted, a few other people didn't stand a chance, but like, even in the novice division, there was no, like, unless the judge had a stroke and accidentally said my name, there was no way I would have won that. But meeting the people there and learning things from them was amazing because there were so many people there. And I got to talk to a lot of people about LEDs and how to wire things, which what helped my costume win. And when I redid it, and about sewing techniques, styling wigs. Like, if you want help on something, go to a competition because you will meet some of the most talented people at the convention there.
That's always something when I see the people for like the cosplay conventions, and it's just how much, I mean, obviously, you know, the work and the time and the money and the effort and everything to get that cosplay to that point in that thing. Like, I couldn't imagine it.
And it's definitely, like, I love the people that spend so much time making theirs, but one thing that I've also found is that, which will also help in competitions, even if your costume isn't 100% perfect, if you, from the second you, and this is more in like, not in a craftsmanship competition, because in a craftsmanship competition, they don't care what you do on stage. They've already judged you. But in a like walk-on competition or something that's performance-based, if you embody the character the second you get on the stage, everyone will love you. Judges included. And so from the second that you start walking up the steps to get on the stage or walk around the curtain, if you are the Winter Soldier or you are Captain Kirk or you are a princess, it really helps. And also walking around a con floor, like if you're just standing, if someone comes up to you and asks for a picture, yeah, you could be yourself and be like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, do your thing. Or if you like do something that's kind of more in character, like anytime I'm Kirk and someone asks me for a picture, like I turn on like in sync level boy band charm. It's like super cheesy, like hammed up, like just boy band level charm. And like everyone loves that when I do that. Or when I'm Anders, I do like, I don't know, I'm kind of out of character for Anders, but I'm really playful when I'm Anders. And like when I'm doing Captain America, I'm always like, yes ma'am, no sir, like I don't know, it's, you kind of just add a little bit extra, and you don't have to go super over the top with it, or you can, you do you. My favorite thing will always be Jack Sparrows that are like swaggering around the convention. Best thing ever. Mm-hmm. Jack Sparrows, keep doing you, it's great. But like the people that are in character, even when you're off stage, I think off stage and on stage brings a completely new level to cosplaying. And it also really helps when you're competing, because you just add that extra, believe me, I am this. Believe me as much as I believe myself that I am this person. So, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have any future cosplay projects in the works?
My main ones are all for Dragon Con. So I'm working on the wetsuit from Star Trek right now. And I'm trying to convince my crew to join me, but they all think I'm crazy and won't suffer with me. They're all laughing at me right now. I can know it. I'm also doing Mirror Kirk if I can find the right glittery fabric. I will be doing Legolas based off of the concept art for The Hobbit, which is kind of like an elven court regal Prince Legolas, which I'm really excited for. Not excited for making it, excited for seeing it when I finish it. My Inquisitor from Dragon Age Inquisition, which is mostly just an excuse for me to build armor. Like, I wouldn't have done it if I just was like, oh, I want to build something shiny and that has cool sculpting. And I was like, oh, well, I'll make my Inquisitor. Yeah, let's go. And then I'm doing some casual stuff this summer, which is going to be super chill, from really small series that people probably haven't heard of, like Camp, which is something that's Rooster Teeth, which are the people that do Ruby and Red versus Blue. And there's this show that's about summer camp, and the outfit's super simple. It's like shorts and a t-shirt, but my friends and I are going to go out to a local campsite and do a photo shoot at a camp. And I just get to be like, good morning, howdy, or good morning, happy campers, just like a howdy campers. English is hard for me, but fun stuff. And then the more complicated stuff, I always keep like a giant list of stuff that I am working on. I'm just drafted the pattern for Bucky Barnes as Captain America when he has the black suit with the like red, white, and blue triangle on the front. Mm-hmm. I've been working on drafting a pattern for that, because if I can make a pattern that I don't hate, I'll make it. But that would require me making a pattern that I'm happy with, which may or may not happen. We'll see.
And where can people find you if they've listened to this episode and they want to follow your work? Where can they best find you on the internet?
If you're going to be on Facebook, my page name is Funscuttle Cosplay on Facebook. It is just Funscuttle on Instagram. I'm working on making a website, but that'll be attached to my Facebook and Instagram eventually. That's about it for the I have a YouTube channel, Funscuttle Creations on YouTube. That is it at the moment.
Okay. Well, I will definitely have links to all of your locations on the podcast and on the Facebook page. So everyone, you guys can just click on them and go take a look. And thank you, Liz, for taking the time out of your day to come and record with me. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.